Welcome into an all-new edition of Daily Faceoff Live, the Wednesday weekly recap edition of the show. We're not leaving you hanging high and dry in the summertime. Before we get rolling, need to tell you that the show's a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Colby Cohen is my co-host today, and I'm laughing because one of the comments we got was, did you guys already forget how to use your microphones? Which, Colby, listen, I'm not pointing fingers, but it's not that far from the truth.
We definitely had a difficult time getting connected today, and we can just leave it at that.
There you go. Appreciate you giving me some time. Excited to talk a little hockey. And luckily for us, the hockey gods graced us with some news over the last 24 hours. So there is a lot for us to get to here on Wednesday, July 9th. So let's kick things off. Colby, I know you love talking a little college hockey, and college hockey landed a pretty big name as Gavin McKenna announced yesterday on ESPN that he is going to Penn State for his draft year. He's leaving the WHL, leaving the Medicine Hat Tigers. As a proud Western Canadian hockey fan, there's a part of me that is sad that this is the new normal in the hockey world. The top prospect goes and plays college hockey instead of playing things out in the CHL. But I also think it's pretty clear to see why this is not only best for McKenna, but probably best for the sport as well.
Listen, I live in a world, Tyler, where I think everybody can play in the sandbox together. And I can understand people from the town of Medicine Hat that are probably really disappointed today. They've spent a lot of time watching Gavin McKenna the last couple of seasons. They've invested money in the jerseys. State College is not an easy place to get to from Alberta. And I do recognize and understand that. But at the end of the day, I think this just makes the NHL better. And I think at the end of the day, these kids now have an opportunity to move up a level and play against older, more mature hockey players, bigger guys, stronger guys, which is what you're going to get at the next level in the pros anyway. And look what Gavin McKenna did in juniors last year. And you tell me, like, what is best for him, to score 220 points and not have to worry about habits, or go to the NCAA, get in the gym, spend a lot of time, practicing, and then playing against an average of 21, 22, and 23-year-old players all season. And, ultimately, I just think that is going to become the path for guys who are either not draft eligible because their birthdays are young, or they need that one extra year. Like, I still think there's a chance, and I think it's a small chance, but, a guy like Porter Martone, the Flyers may say to him, we don't think you're ready for the National Hockey League, and, maybe the college route is best for you. Now, I think that's a very small chance it happens with a guy like Martone, because I think he's looking for a 9-game tryout in the National Hockey League, but at the end of the day, I think it was a big moment for the sport. I think it was a big moment for college. He's on ESPN. It's almost like when LeBron James made The Decision, right? College hockey does not get that kind of love on ESPN ever. So ultimately, I think it was a great day for hockey in the U.S., and I do think that this is a new norm for us, Tyler, with the new rule changes to the NCAA.
Yeah, and we're going to chat with Stephen Ellis, our Daily Faceoff prospect analyst, in our big segment today, and he'll give us more insight into McKenna's game and how it could shift or how he'll adapt to the college style of hockey. But you mentioned something, like, a lot of people might go, well, he's only going to play 20-some-odd games in the CHL.
No, that's not 20 some odd games. You play about 40, maybe somewhere between 40 and 45 games in a college schedule when, you're going to have a couple of exhibition games. You're going to play in the NCAA tournament. You're going to play in your conference tournament, all that type of stuff. So it's not 20 something games. That's just something a Canadian person would say to make them feel like they're taking a shot across the bow.
And that's exactly what I was getting at. There's more to it than what we'll see on Gavin McKenna's boxcar at the end of the year, when he'll probably have however many points in. I mean, I'm doing it right now with Isaac Howard talking Oilers, going, all right, he had 26 goals in like 35 games last year, all this. But there is, again, more to the development side of the college thing than just playing the games, is the point I was kind of making, and in a sense agreeing with what you said off the top as well.
Yeah, I think, I'm of the school of thought that, practice time and time, to develop not just on the ice is important. I think about myself, Tyler. when I was a junior in high school and I got to the U.S. national team, I was 6'2", 145 pounds. Right. And by the time I left BU, a number of, years later, I guess it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, I was 220 pounds. Okay. I mean, that's a lot of time learning how to train, learning how to eat, a lot of practice time. So I think all that stuff is good.
Let's keep the college talk kind of going because it's what was dominating the headlines yesterday. But Isaac Howard has found his way out of the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. He's going to the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, a little weird, I suppose, to sit here and look at a guy who goes, no, I'm not playing in Tampa Bay. And I know there was more to it, but he eventually says, yeah, no, I'll sign my entry-level contract in Edmonton. But he's the reigning Hobey Baker winner. He spent a couple of years in college now after being picked 31st overall by the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2022. His numbers, obviously great. You don't win the Hobey Baker with bad numbers. But Colby, do you think Howard's a guy who can jump right into this Oilers top six?
You know what, Tyler? I think that's a little bit of a stretch, and I know that people are already plugging him in on the top line. I saw Bob Stauffer tweeted something today. I love Bob Stauffer, like he's the Bob father for a reason, but I was kind of like, I think we're setting him up for maybe unrealistic expectations. Now, I do think he can play in the National Hockey League. I just don't know how difficult it might be if you throw him on a line with Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid to be able to play at that pace right away in his career. Now, do I think next year he could become a top six forward for the Edmonton Oilers? Yeah. Do I think they need inexpensive options for the top six? Yes. Listen, the kid can score. The kid's played in a lot of big moments. You look at his tournament history, he's always the guy who's out on the ice scoring the overtime goals. He's always the guy who wants the puck on his stick. Those are attributes that you cannot teach a hockey player. And again, I know you see 26 goals last year and you think, oh, well, that's not a lot of goals. That's a lot of goals in college hockey. And, you look at the last two Hobey Baker winners were Macklin Celebrini, Adam Fantilli before that. These guys stepped right in the NHL. And I think you'd probably look more at like Adam Fantilli's level, in my opinion, where he was a good player in the NHL, but it took him some time to really, a season to really grow into being a top six player. And I think that's more along the lines of the talent that you're looking at with Isaac Howard. I will say this. I like this move for Edmonton, and I'll tell you why I like it. And I know we'll talk to Stephen Ellis about this a little bit later, but you're getting a 21-year-old. And I've always felt like when you draft an 18-year-old, you don't know what they're going to, we're just guessing what they're going to be at their prime at 25 years old. Why wouldn't you want a guy who you can take a few steps forward and say, okay, he's 21. I now know what he's like as a 21-year-old. It's a much smaller window now in order to see what his top potential may be, right? So there's a reason, Tyler, that you rarely see these number one prospects from organizations get traded when they're already a year or two ripened into their development, right? It's much more of a crapshoot. You see way more 18-year-olds, maybe 19-year-olds get traded at the deadline than you do 21-year-old prospects that are first-round picks because, again, I personally think these guys hold more value than a guy you took 1 year ago who's the 32nd overall pick and, who's still played only 1 year of junior hockey since he was drafted. So I really like this move by Stan Bowman. I very much believe in this.
And I like that it's sort of signaling a bit of a shift in the philosophy in Edmonton as well. I think we saw last summer, at least early on in the summer, they sat there and, they swapped out a Fogle and a McLeod and they re-signed Henrique and signed Arvidsson. And they went from, some of these guys who were in their mid-20s who maybe still had some room to grow. They went and signed 30-plus-year-olds. And this summer, I think what we're seeing is, they didn't trade Matt Savoy for immediate help. They're going and get a guy like Isaac Howard. I know they're sacrificing Sam O'Reilly, but you get a guy in Howard who can help you sooner rather than later. O'Reilly's still probably a couple of seasons away, or at least one season away. They're sitting here trying to get younger in the hopes of extending this Stanley Cup window, not just to be a 2 or 3 year thing. They're sitting here going, hey, we have Leon Draisaitl for the next 8 years, Bouchard for at least the next 4. And whenever the McDavid extension comes down, you're going to have McDavid for another 5 to potentially 9 years. Extend your window. Get a guy like Isaac Howard who, if this works, and again, there's still an if here. We don't know exactly what he's going to be or if he's going to be an everyday top 6 guy in the NHL. But if it does work, he's going to be in your top 6 for the next decade. And I think that line of thinking here with the Oilers, not that they're in a position to want to take a step back next year, but it's about keeping one eye on the future and going, we have a chance to win a Stanley Cup every year that we have Connor McDavid, but he's going to need help in years 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 as well. And this is the move that signals they recognize that.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it, Tyler. And I think that, again, I'm not a fan of drafting 18-year-olds. So when you can get a 21-year-old who just won a Hobey Baker, who has now shown us at the college level against 24 and 25-year-olds, like I like this move. This move reeks of Stan Bowman, but I say that in a good way. I know the word reek is not generally something you use in a good way, but I say that very much in a good way.
All right, we're going to keep talking about this later with Stephen Ellis, but a couple of quick things that I want to touch on from around the rest of the league. One big piece of news from the last week is that the Buffalo Sabres opted for team-elected salary arbitration with Bowen Byram. This kind of puts a kill to the whole offer sheet conversation, but since it's team-elected, whatever number the arbiter throws out, Bowen Byram's allowed to put his hand up and say, actually, I want that for 2 years, and it would walk him straight to unrestricted free agency. There was obviously a lot of smoke, we'll call it 8 days ago, when the free agency window opened, even around the draft as well, that the Sabres were trying to get a haul for Byram, and then there was talk that there are teams clamoring to make an offer sheet for Bowen Byram. Colby, I feel like we've maybe, and part of it's maybe the market here, I feel like we've lost the plot a little bit with Bowen Byram. He's a very good defenseman. I'm not trying to say he's not a top 4 D-man, but the teams who were willing to apparently go north of $9 million on an AAV for him, on a Stanley Cup team, he's not a top pairing guy.
No, I totally agree with you. I think he's more of a complement piece. I don't think that his offensive game has ever sort of developed like I think people thought it would when he was first drafted. And I don't think his defensive game is that of a shutdown top pair number 1 type of guy either. So I think he finds his way as sort of a middle pair type of defenseman. I think the number for a guy like Bowen Byram would be more like somewhere in the 6s or the 7s is where I would be more comfortable paying a guy like Bowen Byram. But it's definitely been a rocky road for him. He wanted out in Colorado because he wanted more of an opportunity. I know when the Flyers made the Cutter Gauthier trade, I know there was a deal that was on the table that included Gauthier going to Colorado for Bowen Byram, and I know that deal never came to fruition because of what else was asked, to be thrown in from Colorado to the Philadelphia Flyers. And again, I think then he goes to Buffalo, where a lot of guys' careers don't go so well when they get to Buffalo. So I just don't think we've truly seen what this guy could be. But if he does not get out of Buffalo sooner than later, I think he's just going to end up kind of being a very, very above average defenseman in the National Hockey League for the next number of years.
I like that term, actually, very, very above average, because I think just calling him above average is not complimentary enough, but I'm not willing to sit here and be like, oh, Bowen Byram's elite. Oh, Bowen Byram can carry a pairing himself. Like, agreed. I'm just not there yet. You're very, very above average. That's very, very well.
We haven't seen it. Yeah, in the summertime, I like to make words up, Tyler.
I want to do a little look back again. We're 8-9 days into the free agency window, the real meat of the off season. And I think it's enough times passed that we can pass a little judgment on a few teams, but we'll start on the positive note, Colby. I'm going to ask you to give me one team that's trending down in a moment, but what about one team that's trending up? Who's a GM who you want to give some flowers to and say, you know what, in these last 8 to 10 days, they've done a bang up job improving their organization?
I mean, look, I think to me, what Vegas was able to do and get Mitch Marner, I know it was only one piece. They avoid the tampering charges. They get Mitch Marner. Now Jack Eichel has the guy that he has been dying to play with. And I think, you look at the way Eichel skates and the pace that he plays with, and you look at Stone, who is not, he's not the most beautiful looking skater while he's extremely efficient. He just doesn't get up and down the ice at the pace that Jack Eichel has. I also think Bruce Cassidy has a way to get the best out of guys like Mitch Marner. And I believe that, to get him not in free agency, his cap number is only 12 million. I think there was all this talk that he wanted 13, he wanted 14. He didn't care about the 8 years. We heard every philosophy under the sun about Mitch Marner, but I think that is a massive, massive add to this team. I think it brings the youth into a little more youth into that top line. Dorofeev is a guy who's still kind of coming into his own. I think Jack Eichel has become a premier player in the National Hockey League after Connor McDavid. I'm putting him head to head against McDavid every day of the week, and I'm worried because it's McDavid, but I feel a lot better because it's Jack Eichel going head to head against Connor McDavid. So I think Vegas did a great job of making sure they went out, they got their 100-point man. They got a guy who I think is going to complement Jack Eichel really well. And again, where we criticize Marner, he's going to have role models now in Vegas that he's going to have to look in the eye. He's going to have to look Eichel in the eye. He's going to have to look Stone in the eye. Guys that have been through it, they've done it, they've won. You don't have that in Toronto. You've got guys that are more worried about being on the cover of GQ than lifting the Stanley Cup, late in June. So, I like Vegas and what they did bringing in Mitch Marner.
I worry about their blue line a little bit, but there's no doubt the forward group is more prepared to, go toe-to-toe with the Oilers and the other big dogs in the West. I wanted to give some love to the Montreal Canadiens. I think the work that they did for a handful of things, like the Noah Dobson deal, I loved that trade. You sat there and said, what, here's a guy who's established, who can carry a blue line, and he's 25. I'm not worried about committing $9.5 million to that guy because he's going to get better. And then Kent Hughes and company, they sat there and said, well, we have a surplus on D. Let's go get Zach Bolduc, add another legitimate 20-goal guy who, again, he's 22. Like, everything they did fit their age range. They got better. They didn't sacrifice a whole bunch of future assets. And here's the other thing I love. They didn't make a mistake. They didn't sit here and go, we made the playoffs, let's go get a big free agent. When they want to upgrade their blue line, they didn't go sign Provorov or Gavrikov. And I know those guys are good defensemen, but they're almost 30. There's a chance that the contracts don't age well. And then you have an albatross on your books as you try to one day sign the Hudsons and the Demidovs. And I just love that they went and improved their team without taking any sort of a risk that could really blow up in their face. So they get my trending up. Trending down, Colby. I'll go first since I let you go first on trending up. I don't understand what the Vancouver Canucks are doing. You bring in Evander Kane for $5 million. You give up a pick to do it, and then you watch Pius Suter go out the door. And it's like, well, hold up. That guy could score 25 goals for you and play in all scenarios and help and be a top six centerman. Evander Kane cannot help you down the middle. And now you have Philip Hedl as your second line center, and you're hoping for a Pettersson bounce back. And you just look at their center depth. It's absolutely atrocious. They brought the band back with Besser and Demko, but they got worse, Colby. I don't see a path to Vancouver making the playoffs out west.
Yeah, I don't either. And I got to tell you, I played with Adam Foote, and I'm rooting for him. He was honestly one of the most unreal guys that I ever got to be around in the game of hockey, as far as, just being an awesome vet. So I am praying for his success, but I do think it's going to be really difficult. I mean, you took JT Miller out of that group this past season. You just talked about Pius Suter, who's been on his way. They're slow. I don't like their back end. It's just not a mobile enough group. You're counting on Derek Forbort way too much, in my opinion. Tyler Myers, like, bigger guys slow down more and more as they get older, more than, a smaller or more average type of player. Evander Kane, again, doesn't bring a lot of speed to your lineup, can be very effective when he's kind of playing between the whistles. There's no doubt about that, but I'm with you. And when you're looking at Philip Hedl, who has had a lot of injury troubles, and you're counting on him to be on that second line role, it's troubling. I don't understand anything about Vancouver. Who's in charge there? Is it Rutherford? Is it Alvin? I think we all know it's Rutherford, not Alvin, but still, it's just been a very messy situation. And it makes me wonder if Rutherford's going to be the guy who actually ends up dealing with the Quinn Hughes situation that is coming right around the corner.
Yeah. Who did you have trending down over the last 10 days?
Can you just explain to me what the Seattle Kraken are doing? I for the life of me can't figure it out. I mean, again, the Lane Lambert hire was kind of strange to me based on what I heard about the job that he did in New York. Now, granted, Lou Lamoriello is obviously the puppet master for anybody in New York, other than maybe Patrick Waugh. But, I just don't understand. Look who they brought in. I mean, sure, Mason Marchment, He's a nice player. He definitely hasn't lived up to that contract, but you're not looking at him to really deliver every night offensively. That's a more of a 200-foot, well-rounded type of guy who's also had some injury troubles. Ryan Lindgren can never stay healthy. Freddie Gaudreau, I do like the versatility that he brings. Okay, he's played on the first, second, third, and fourth line during his time in Minnesota, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You move Ron Francis to the corner office. You give Jason Botterill the keys as the general manager. So who's really making the decisions there, Tyler? And I wonder that when I see these president of hockey operations type of promotions happening in front offices. So I for the life of me, man, they've just been average. They continue to be average. They continue to make average moves. Nothing inspiring with their coaching hire. I don't know. I find it hard to see what their plan really is.
It's brutal. I don't get it at all. Even
are they in the McKenna sweepstakes?
Well, but they're not that terrible. I think they're just going to finish last every year and not have a hope in hell of moving up. And I guess you could say the Islanders got lucky but you can't sit there and be like, well, maybe we'll win the lottery on a 3% chance like the Islanders or whatever the hell it was. It's just it's not going to happen. All right. On that note, let's get to our big segment for the day. It's the Next Wave, and it's brought to you by the Ninja Crispy 4-in-1 portable glass air fryer.
Meet the first of its kind. The Ninja Crispy Portable Cooking System. The power of a full-sized air fryer in the palm of your hand. So you can cook big or small batches. Just prep it, crisp it, serve it, and store it all in one.
It's an all-in-one cooking system that allows you to go from frozen to crispy in just minutes. It's thermal shock resistant, and with the Crispy Power Pod, you get the power of a full-sized air fryer in the palm of your hands. Prep, cook, and store anything from crispy favorites to one-dish meals. Visit their website with the link in our description or check out ninjakitchen.ca as we welcome in Stephen Ellis to the program. And Stephen, lots of news in the prospect world over the last 24 hours, but let's start with Gavin McKenna. It was at the point where he was kind of just looking too good for the CHL. How do you think his game adjusts over to the NCAA? Is he going to be just as dominant?
Yeah, like Colby was talking about it a few minutes ago, and you look at the fact that if he went back to the WHL, he would have put up 190, 200 points easily. And the Medicine Hat's still going to be a good team next year. So, I think going to college was the right move here. Going to Penn State, a team that's clearly putting a lot of money behind their program, trying to be such a competitive team with such a really good class coming in, guys like Jackson Smith and Luke Mesa and Charlie Serrato, and just a ton of talented players there. So I think with him, I do expect him to put up numbers maybe similar to what we saw from Macklin Celebrini. It's going to be a bit of a different jump for him. But when you look at McKenna, maybe not the strongest player we've ever seen in the world, but at the same time, he's got the skill. He's so smart. He can outthink people. So I have no question about it that he's going to go out there and be able to dominate the NCAA and be one of the best players in the league.
I think one of the big differences between him and Celebrini would just be that Celebrini played in the USHL, which is, a heavier, more similar to the college game type of league, which is kind of how it's developed over the years. And my question for you, Stephen, would be, because I do agree offensively, I think he'll put up Celebrini type of numbers. I think he'll be very capable of that. I think Penn State plays a very high-flying offensive game. They're in transition. They're up and down the ice. And there's other good players around him at Penn State. But let's just say he starts off and he struggles, okay? Do you think that will deter other CHL guys from making the jump and coming to the NCAA? Because we really do always say it's a copycat league. It's a copycat sport. And I just wonder what kind of ramifications we think it could have if, let's say, he comes out and, he isn't just lighting it up from the first second he steps into the NCAA.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great question. I don't think so, because you still look at the benefits, and a lot of it is, they don't play as many games as you play in the CHL, but you're still playing a ton of games, and you're still playing against older, tougher competition. And I think that alone is going to be something that's very beneficial. And the one name that always kind of comes to mind, or actually two names that come to mind when I think about players that benefited a lot from going the college route, were Lane Hudson and Cole Caulfield, two Montreal Canadiens players. With Cole Caulfield, a lot of people said, he could do those dazzling plays and with the program, but was he going to be able to pull that off against tougher competition? Well, he spent a lot of time in the weight room. And then you look at Lane Hudson. He grew. He became much more difficult to play against, and we just saw the season he had. So I think the benefits of going out there, and even if you're not dominating to the point of what we saw from Macklin Celebrini, much different player, obviously, than Gavin McKenna.
Yeah.
You're still looking at the fact that you're gaining the physical elements, you're playing against tougher competition, and you're pushing yourself to a level that you're not doing when you're going up and beating up on some of these smaller junior programs.
Yeah. Well, let's stay with the college theme and the prospect theme here, Stephen, because I want to ask you your opinion about what we saw with Isaac Howard and Sam O'Reilly. And full transparency, I've seen Isaac Howard play a number of times. I have not studied the film. I have not seen Sam O'Reilly's game. I am unfamiliar with anything but what he did as far as the stats go with the London Knights. And I don't know if you heard what I talked about with Tyler off the top when we talked about this, kind of getting an older prospect that's closer to what you think he can become. Where do you sit with this trade? Do you like it for one more than the other? Do you think it's a wash? Or, what does our prospect expert Stephen Ellis think?
I like it for both teams and for different reasons. I think when you look at, Howard fits a more immediate need for that team, some scoring help. I don't know if he's going to go out there and put up a ton of points next year. I think the thing that stands out about his game and has been an issue maybe since his NTDP days is his play away from the puck, is that he's not always engaged. He's not always the one going out there and chasing the puck and making things happen. But then you see the numbers, and clearly he knows what to do with the puck. Clearly he knows how to dominate on the power play. And for me, it was, you always had to find the right balance. You had to give him a great centerman to kind of figure it out. He's got options in Edmonton, and I feel like that is a good fit for him. I think he's going to be a very valuable player. If I had to guess who would be the more impactful guy, I would have to maybe say there's a bit of it me kind of pointing towards Sam O'Reilly. I'm not saying he's going to have more points than Isaac Howard. I think Howard will be the better offensive player, but Sam O'Reilly is more of this all-around two-way threat. And again, kind of going back to just bringing back Celebrini, you look at him compared to Bedard or he compared to McKenna, and those guys are more offensively skilled and will probably be the guys putting up more points in the future. But then you look at Celebrini, and he thinks the game at such a high level. And that's what I see, obviously not to the level of Celebrini, but the way that Sam O'Reilly thinks the game. I think he's going to be a very good two-way center who loves having the puck on his stick, is very difficult to take the puck off of. And so Howard's more of a top six guy. I think O'Reilly's a third line guy, but they're both going to be good at those specific roles that I think no matter what way you look at it, you're happy for both teams.
Last one I got for you over at dailyfaceoff.com. Your big summer series is going through every team's prospect pool. And, one team that I think is obviously fascinating and has really rocketed up your rankings is a team like the Islanders, right? Cal Ritchie, they get at the deadline, not only Schaefer, but the two other first round picks in Eklund and Atchison. Again, they did a good job, I think, in the last 6 months of kind of at least adding some names to the list. Are there any other teams out there who you've really liked what they've done maybe in the last year in terms of adding pieces to their prospect pool?
It's definitely the Boston Bruins. That's the one that comes to mind first. You look at adding James Hagens at number 7. That's going to look like a steal 10 years from now, 100%. I think Fraser Minton is like a perfect third-line center for that team. I think he's going to be a really good piece there. The jury's kind of still out about Fabian Lysell, if he's going to make it work. But one name I'd like to mention is actually Dan's Ellis, a guy that I was pretty high on when he was drafted in the 4th round out of Latvia a couple years ago. He had this really explosive year at UMass this year. He was always kind of projected more of a defensive forward, but he showed this offensive potential in the way that he was able to dominate the puck in a way that I don't think anyone expected. And it wasn't just doing that at the college level. He was Latvia's best player at the World Championship. And honestly, he was never going to come close to getting an MVP, but I don't think if Latvia made the playoffs and went far, he would have been the reason why. So Boston's a much more dangerous pipeline than they were a year ago. Boston and the Islanders were right at the bottom. Both of them have moved up big time in the last couple of weeks.
Stephen, appreciate your time. You can read his prospect pool breakdowns over on dailyfaceoff.com. We'll chat with you soon.
Thanks so much.
All right, Ask DFO time. We got one in from Randy. Are you buying anything into the Ilya Sorokin rumors? I mean, listen, I do think there is a part of that Islanders front office that should sit there and go, maybe we just pull the plug on all of this and try to do a really, really hard reset. You trade Sorokin, trade basically anything off your roster and bottom out for a little bit. I also look at Sorokin and go, he's 29. Like, if the Islanders think they're going to be good in 2 seasons, Colby, which, I mean, who knows how quickly they can turn this around. If they think they're going to be good in a 2 to 3 year window, then no, it doesn't make sense to trade Sorokin.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there should be any confusion across the platforms that we are talking on every day what I think about goaltending. And even in a down year for Sorokin, he's better than most of the other goaltenders in the National Hockey League. So I think you do not let him go unless, like you said, if you say we have a 5-year rebuild ahead of us and we are burning it down to the studs and it's Barzal and it's literally everyone going out the door, then sure. Now, granted, Tyler, they've made some really weird moves as far as like letting Noah Dobson go. And like, we know that they're trying to potentially move on from a couple of other guys. I think they're going to be terrible next year. They just might be in denial about how terrible they're going to be next year. And I also want to know, how's that going to go with Patrick Waugh coaching a retool or whatever you want to call it? That I don't see going very well either.
No, and that's why I kind of said when they announced they were bringing back Patrick Waugh, I said that's just a free bullet for Matthew Darche to fire at some point where he can go, hey, he's not my guy. I get a redo on the coaching hire. And in the meantime, you buy yourself a year and a half potentially of running out the Patrick Waugh thing, and that's just an easy excuse you can kind of pull on. Let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Calder Trophy odds. Yes, I saw people in the chat asking about it, so I figured I'd bring them up. Ivan Demidov's the runaway favorite. No one saw their odds shoot up more in the last 24 hours, though, than Isaac Howard. I think he was like 100-1. Now he's all the way up to 25-1 to win the Calder. I get that there's some Oilers fans in our chat who are all excited. I don't see it. I think this is Demidov's to lose, even though we're in July. I think Isaac Howard can be good in Edmonton, but I would not be putting money on him to win the Calder Trophy next season. I think that's just a bridge too far.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Demidov. I like it because I like the way that team plays. I like Marty St. Louis working with young hockey players, and I like the opportunities that Demidov is going to get versus the opportunities that Howard's going to get on a win-now type of team that has the superstars that it does. So I think another interesting name on there would be Michael Misa, who, again, it's tough when you've already got Celebrini there, who's going to have the puck on his stick, and Will Smith, who seems to come into his own amongst other good, talented players. So I'm with you rolling on the Demidov train. I think that's the guy to throw your money behind as of right now.
Wrapping up the show with a little bit of garbage time. Let's wrap on a goaltending topic. I don't know if you saw this report from earlier in the week, but 5 teams have been tried to convince Marc-Andre Fleury to come out of retirement. I think it is a sign that the goaltending market this summer was just absolutely pitiful. But I will say, Marc-Andre Fleury did kind of get talked out of retirement to go back and play for Team Canada at the Worlds. Maybe it's not the craziest idea in the world, but I love that teams are getting so desperate that they're like, fuck it, the 41-year-old, go get that guy.
Don't forget, it was Stan Bowman who traded for Marc-Andre Fleury and brought him to Chicago, gave him the contract that he did, that 2-year deal, I believe, that he finished out on before he got traded at the deadline with Kyle Davidson. So there is a relationship there. I said this on one of our last Morning Cup of Hockey episodes before this rumors came out. I said, you just watch. Stan Bowman will have something up his sleeve. He'll bring someone out of retirement if he has to. But the Edmonton Oilers, come hell or high water, will have different goaltenders going into the playoffs next year.
Bet365 does still have odds up, by the way, on who will be the Oilers' Game 1 starter. Stuart Skinner is the remaining odds-on favorite, but you never know. You never know. Colby, thank you for doing this. What have you been up to your first 8 days of summer? You hitting the rollerblades a lot?
I have not been out rollerblading, but it's been a lot of beach time, dude. I chase kids around all day. I am a stay-at-home dad chasing his kids around the beach and the pool all day.
Doesn't sound too bad. At least you're around the beach, around the pool. But appreciate you giving us some time today. Everybody in the YouTube chat, was fantastic to see you all popping up and asking questions and talking to one another. We're doing this every Wednesday throughout the entire summer. So make sure if you're new here, you're subscribed so you don't miss a show. Morning Cup of Hockey, new interviews also dropping every Wednesday, correct, Colby?
Yeah. Yep, 9 a.m. We took this week we had a little week down. Give Johnny a little bit of rest and recovery from his travels, and we'll be back next week. Not exactly sure who the guest will be, but we will have 9 a.m. next Wednesday morning. We will have a new Morning Cup of Hockey out.
The Sheet's got new episodes a couple times a week as well, so we got you covered all throughout the summer. That is a wrap on a July 9th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Thanks to Steven, thanks to Colby, thanks to my producer, Pat Puff. We'll chat with you all again next Wednesday.